Ancient technologies. Hancock is right. So Graham Hancock has a theory about there was an ancient civilization that predates, you know, all civilizations, and they were advanced, pretty advanced for, a civilization, right? They would at least know a lot about math, science, and stuff like that, and they would have been able to create, amazing things. So they had a lot of knowledge, which is very important, right? And then they were wiped out. But they had some survivors. Those survivors then went and taught other civilizations, other groups around the world, these things, these knowledge. Share with them information that will help them speed up their evolutionary path, right? Their path from going from hunter gatherers, which is typically mentioned, up to a more civilized, not necessarily civilized per se, not saying that hunter gatherers aren't civilized, but you get the idea, is a more advanced, I'll just say advanced, a more advanced culture. So they went from a more base, basically, they went from country lifestyle to a more metropolitan lifestyle, according to Graham, which makes sense because that's our evolutionary path, right? We go from, being essentially farmers, right, at some point, hunter gatherers, but then we become farmers, aka agriculture, but then we go and create societies. We start creating laws and rules and stuff like that, and skyscrapers and airplanes. The list goes on, right? So if we went that path, what's to say the other past civilizations didn't do the same thing? Why can't we believe that there is a possibility, right, that there was a human civilization, right? There was a world similar to ours right now that existed in the past, very similar to our civilization, but then it was wiped out, right, in an apocalypse. And then, right, well, since we have to restart, right, because that's what happens after an apocalypse, the old world is gone, and I have to rebuild from scratch, right? You have to start from scratch. So what's to say we didn't start from scratch and then start, hunter gatherers, right? Basically just being survivors of an apocalypse, right? Trying to survive on this planet with basic tools, right? Rocks, sticks, stones, rope and stuff like that, fishing, and then go from there, and then start doing agriculture, right? Then start building structures, and then laws and society and governments, and the list goes on, armies, and we get to the point where we at. It sounds, if anything, it sounds like if we ended up getting hit by like a comet or something, or an apocalypse or a flooding or something like that major happened, that's literally what our story would be. We were an advanced civilization. They got wiped out. Some of our survivors will carry on trying to repopulate the earth, right? Try to keep the human race going and trying to rebuild what we lost. So why couldn't that have already happened? It's ignorant to assume that it didn't happen before. Like, we're the only advanced civilization to have ever been on this planet. That's a low IQ mentality. Only people with low IQ think that we are the most advanced the human race has ever been. Incorrect. We're still learning things. We're still dumb compared to what we could be. Think about it. 100 years from now, we will be considered primitive, dumb compared to people who are 100 years, into the future. It's not because they're going to have flying cars, or their smartphone's going to be a microchip in their head or some dumb shit like that, or they're going to be genetically enhanced, or they're going to be, AI enhanced or some bullshit like that. No. More like this, because they're going to go back to more basic stuff, more natural stuff, more understanding of how the universe actually works, and do things a lot better, more like the ancient civilizations in the past. Which is why I make the ancient technology series, because I'm more interested in the technology of the past. Because of the fact that it's like, yeah, in order to lift 100-ton block, it's going to take a lot. Even if you did it with just rope, right? Rope and some wood, and created some type of like tripod system to pull and lift up the the block with a whole bunch of dudes, which is not impossible. It's just it's going to require a lot of dudes, right? You got to make sure you use the right amount of wood, the right amount of rope to do it, right? So this is more of a work harder, not smarter type of situation. Even though you are using a tripod hoist type method, basically a simplified human powered crane, essentially, is still not as advanced as if you were to create it using flywheels, like big stone wheels that are spinning, and using that momentum to to pull and wind up the rope, which is connected to whatever you're trying to lift, and then have some counterweights, so that way the weight of the counterweights obviously adds to the pulling and the lifting force necessary to lift heavy things, and the list goes on and on of the things you can do. Obviously add wheels so you can move it and make it portable so it can go everywhere and move where you need it. And the list goes on. It's like making it more advanced. So it clearly is going for it to make it a lot easier, right? You're going to need something a little bit more advanced than just stick and rope and a whole bunch of dudes, right? Because what if you don't have enough guys to lift something? Then you're not going to be able to lift it. So you gotta have to find some type of smart way of making the job easier. That's all I'm saying. Smarter, not harder. And I believe ancient humans believe in working smarter, not harder. Think about hunter-gatherers. They try to do things in a simple way, which is just walk around, find some trees where they have some fruits, and grab the fruits and eat it. Simple, right? Instead of trying to figure out how to grow food, they could just eat food that already exists. They can go fish, which is simple. A stick and a rope. Put a little sharp tooth at the end of it and put a worm on it, and boom, there you go. You got a fishing rod, right? Or you can just or you could do a harpoon fishing type thing, rope, stick, and sharp point at the end of a stick, and just throw the stick at something and pull it on the rope, right? Things like that. But it's like, though, again, like I said, work smarter, not harder. You can make a bow and arrow set, and the list goes on and on. But at some point, you're going to have to start creating tools. But then the tools eventually will have to become more advanced when you want to do bigger, better things, like building monolithic structures, which, if you're using big rocks, you're going to need stuff that can handle big rocks. There's no guarantee you're going to have a whole bunch of dudes who can help you pick up that big rock, right? So you're going to have to figure out something, and that's where intelligence comes in, right? Work smarter, not harder. I believe ancient humans definitely had to work smarter because they don't have the advancements that we specifically have. Like they don't have the easy choices that we have, right? Especially if they have to do everything with pulley systems, right? So in other words, they have to use more geometry, more math, more physics, or understandings of physics and gravity. They have to use more of that than a power source attached to some type of machine that does all the work for you, right? You still gotta use. Ancient humans had to use the most advanced piece of technology that a human can have, and that's called the human brain. This is why I hate that you get a lot of idiots out there tend to talk down about humans in the past, especially Egyptians. They always try to act like Egyptians are dumb. It's like, oh no, no way they could build pyramids with chisels and hammers. It's like anybody who says that that's how they did it is wrong and dumb. Clearly, they didn't build the pyramids that way. I don't even believe they were the ones who built it in the first place. That's for another conversation, right? But the point is, they definitely, you know, um, didn't use copper chisels and hammers, to build big monolithic structures. You need more than that, clearly. And that's the whole point. You're going to need something more advanced, right? You're going to need some real good technology, right? The whole smarter, not harder. So stuff like the wheel and stuff like that is important. There's people who think Egyptians didn't even have wheels. There's people out there still saying that, right? And I've proven that's wrong. They had wheels. They understood the concept of wheel. So clearly they could have used wheels to do things. So the idea of being able to lift something with wheels is possible. Being able to use wheels to power things, like a water wheel, for example. They had access to water, and they understood the concept of wheel. Combine those two things, you have a water wheel. What can you do with a water wheel? You can make things turn. What can you do with things turning? You can move things. What can you do with moving things? Build shit. Move things into position that you want it to be, so that way you can use it for whatever you want it to use it for. Right? I have a lot of videos, obviously, on the technology topic. But I just wanted to really talk about Hancock's theory thing and how he's right, and point out something. So his theory is correct, regardless of what people believe. We need evidence. We need evidence. It's like, we exist. That's evidence enough. Like, for example, we know in order for us to exist, right, male and females, there had to been the first man, the first woman, right, to exist, right? We had to have start somewhere. So let's call them Adam and Eve. So if we're going with that concept, right, we don't need to find their bodies to prove our existence, right? We know we exist, or at least it's the idea is like, we don't need to find their bodies to know that they existed or to prove their existence, right? To prove that there was the first man and first woman that started the human race. Like, we don't need them as proof of their existence. Our existence is proof of their existence, right? We're a byproduct of them. Just like you can say, oh, we don't need proof of how the pyramids were built because the pyramids exist, and that's proof enough. It's like, that's proof that yes, that clearly it's possible to build the pyramids, and it was built through certain methods. But out of curiosity, we would like to know the exact details, or at least as very close details, so we can be like, all right, we understand how it was built. We know it was built, obviously, because it exists, and that's good enough. Who built it would be cool to know, but it's not that deep. Me personally, I'm more interested in how it was built, the technology that was used to build it, more so than anything. Not necessarily who built it, not necessary. Well, why was it built? Like, what's its purpose, and the tools that was used to build. Those are the two things that I do care about. The purpose of the pyramids, and and the tools to build them. But everything else doesn't matter to me as much. Like, who built them, and whatnot. But back to the Adam and Eve things, like, you got Adam, it's like we don't need to find Adam and Eve's body just, you know, just to prove that they could have existed, right? Because everything else kind of gives you an idea that, yeah, there was a, first man, first woman type situation. Because it would make sense. Because we exist, so that's more likely exists. It's the whole chicken and the egg thing, right? Who came first, chicken or the egg? Who cares? Chickens and eggs still exist, so who cares, right? But for those who do, all right, well, right, figure it out, right? But the idea of like, oh, there was no advanced civilization, and then all these other civilizations were influenced by it. It's like, it makes sense that they were, considering the fact that all these civilizations have a lot of the same stories, right? They have stories similar to the Adam and Eve story, right? They have a story where it's like, hey, something bad happened that involved water or fire or something, or some big cataclysm, right? And somebody came and taught us stuff and helped us build our current civilizations with religion and all that stuff, right? And our belief in the stars. And it's like, that seems interesting. And then every civilization was in ancient times was doing the same thing. They had religious beliefs, right? They built megalithic structures, right? Supposedly, they're the ones who built it, and stars. So stars, megalithic structures, religious belief, and they were given that information according to them, according to people who are descendants of those civilizations, are the ones claiming that was what happened. Not Graham Hancock saying that that's what happened to them. No, they said that. And all he's saying is, I noticed all these different civilizations, a lot of the ancestors from these civilizations tell stories of like how their civilization existed, like their origin, right? Their history. And their history says something bad happened. Somebody came and taught them how to survive after the bad thing happened, right? Basically a disaster relief person or an apocalypse specialist or something, a survivalist, right? Somebody with knowledge to help these people who were there after a big disaster, and like, here's some information, here's some knowledge, here's how you can do this, that, third. Because think about it, you know what's ironic? We do that now. Whenever there's like a hurricane, like Hurricane Katrina or something like that, whenever there's a natural disaster, what happens? We send relief, right? And what do? Sometimes we help them build structures. Sometimes we help them, put up some plumbing or something, or put up some solar panels so they can get electricity. So like we try to figure out a way to improve their situations because they lost their situation. The stuff they had to survive, they lost it, and now we gave them upgraded versions of that from our civilization. We taught them how to do things we do. Let's say they didn't have internet. Well, we give it to them. They don't have, they didn't really use electricity, and we give them solar panels, and now they have electricity, right? As an example, like they had less than us, but we gave them more. Like we have a term for it. We call it third world country, right? There's places on this planet that isn't the same as America. That isn't the same as Europe or Asia, China, right? So there's places there will be considered less primitive. Not less primitive, less advanced, right? Or less like us, right? They're different. Let's just say different. They're different. But when something bad happens, the fact that we have more knowledge and more resources than they do, us coming in and helping them out, obviously makes us their saviors in that regard, right? It makes us those Quetzalcoatl and all them legendary, people who came after a big, disaster and helped, right? It just seems like it's a normal human thing to do that when something bad happens, you go travel and find other human beings and help them, help those who need help. So this whole idea of like, no, there wasn't a lost civilization that went around the world after a big disaster and started teaching people things. No way that would ever happen. Why? Because you think humans aren't selfless? You think humans are pieces of shit that are selfish? Oh, you must have that, you know, Gen Z type of mentality, thinking everything is bad when everything's not bad. Only 60% of the world is terrible. 40% is still awesome. And the irony is Gen Z is going downhill because all they do is absorb negativity, so they become that which they hate, that which they think the world is. They don't realize they're the ones creating it. A lot of the bad things that happen in this world tends to come more from the younger generation, not the older generation. The younger generation grows up in and becomes an older generation, and then they end up creating a lot of problems. A lot of the problems we have right now that you'll be like, oh no, it's not young people. Look at what the old people are doing. Yeah, they were young a couple years ago. Like 10, 20 years ago, they were teenagers. They were young. They were the ones, doing dumb shit. And then they grew up and became adults. And then they continued the dumb shit. So now they're in charge, doing dumb shit, encouraging dumb shit. And now you got the new young generation looking at this older generation, and it's like, damn, oh, this older generation are doing dumb shit. This is bullshit, blah, blah, not realizing this, like, but they used to be you. They used to be the young generation. And they grew up into, I'll say, pieces of shit. And what do you think you're going to grow up into? Better than them? No. You're just going to repeat the cycle. You're going to become pieces of shit. And the funny thing is, while y'all still young, y'all already doing dumb shit. Y'all have access to the internet. Instead of doing amazing, great things with it, getting smarter, a lot of y'all getting dumber. So much so that just the idea of like a civilization of smart humans in the past existing, something bad happens, so then they spread around, started helping other people, so that way the human race can survive. And clearly it did, because we're here. And then want to question like, oh, no way they existed. No way a smart civilization existed that is as smart as we are, who made sure that we even exist because they were smart enough to teach other people how to do amazing things like build megalithic structures. Because you gotta understand the megalithic structures, the monolithic structures, right, lasted a long, long time. Why would you build something to last a long time for? Maybe it's for future generations. It's for the human race. Like, let's build these big structures, protective, structures, strong, solid structures, so future humans can guarantee they always have shelter, always have a place to live, no matter what happens, no matter many disasters. I mean, think about it. Even in places that have been hit by hurricanes, when they rebuild with better, stronger materials. They create hurricane-proof structures, which are typically reinforced concrete structures, basically megalithic structures. We do that in modern day times. So to say, oh no, an ancient civilization wouldn't do that, that's implying that ancient civilizations are dumb and only we are smart. That is incorrect. If anything, we're the dumb ones compared to them, because they already learned from their mistakes, right? They already learned that they need to prepare for an apocalypse, right? Because they experienced it and then they built stuff to prepare for the next apocalypse. Right now, we're just here being dumb, like, la la la, nothing bad can happen. We are so smart. And then boom, an apocalypse happens. And then we're going to like, oh shit, one, Graham was correct. That's the first thing most people are going to say. And second, it's like, oh shit, we should have prepared. Yeah, like the ancient humans, prepared, right? And I'll use the lost city of Atlantis as an example. Like, that civilization could have been Atlantis, which could have been a direct ancestry of Adam and Eve, or the first man and woman, right? They created, the human race, right? We spread, Eventually, we evolved to the point where Atlantis exists, and then from Atlantis, like I said, a big catastrophe happened. Like, let's call it the Younger Dryas, and then boom, now we are where we're currently at, which is like, hey, there's a possibility that there was a civilization, you know, pretty much on our level that existed, but now no longer exists. But some proof of their existence is people of the past had bits and pieces of really advanced stuff that even right now we're like, how did they do it? How did they do it? When it should be, oh, we know how they did it, obviously, because we're so advanced, we know how they did it. But instead, you got a lot of idiots out here like, oh, we don't know how they did this, that, and the third. How could they do it? They're not smarter than us. Yes, they are. And that's the end of the video.